So today we're going to be taking a look at a scenario where North America disappears. Continuing on with the What If Continent Disappeared series, we've already done Europe, we've done Asia, we've done Africa, we've even done the United States, but now we're doing all of North America. If you guys do enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. We're aiming for 100,000 subscribers soon. I was going to say by the end of the year, but it is now 2023, which means we are aiming for it by the end of the year. We're just trying to get there as soon as possible, so make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. We're within 10,000 subscribers to go, and we are almost there. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump right into this video. So North America has disappeared from the face of the earth, and no one knows how or why. In an alternative universe, this has happened with both Europe, Asia, and Africa, and in those universes, no one was able to figure out why. And it's no different in this one, with everyone confused as to why the third largest continent has vanished. But nonetheless, North America is it's a semi-important continent in the grand scheme of things. I mean, of course, it wasn't discovered as early as the Old World, and of course, the history doesn't span as far, but there's been some notable events happening there in North America, especially with the United States and Canada, and of course, all of Central America and the Caribbean. But with the North America gone, there's one obvious and very important country that is gone, and that is the USA. So with the USA gone, Europe is going to be left vulnerable to the east. We also have South America, who is currently under the protection of the USA, and they're also kind of being like held together in check by the US. So with them gone, that balance and check is going to disappear. But our first war that will be happening over here is Russia's expansion into Europe. Now I take it back, this isn't really a war, it's an event of Russia just going and invading several European countries. The first of which is Estonia. Now NATO. So they exist, but they are not what they are in real life. The USA basically is NATO, and then these other countries just join in and contribute, but a majority of NATO is literally the US Army. So without the US here, these European countries and NATO as a whole is going to be a lot more weak. They're not going to be able to really unify themselves with each other because of the European differences, and it's just not going to work out. So NATO as a whole is still here, although they will not be responding to this invasion of Estonia because they can't agree on anything. So Russia will get away with this one as they invade Estonia, but someone else isn't going to allow this, and they're not even a member of NATO yet. That is Finland. They're going to stick up for Estonia here and join the war on the side of Estonia. Other countries joining in are Ukraine and Poland, as well as Latvia and Lithuania. Belarus joins the war, and all of a sudden we have a pretty large-scale conflict over here in Eastern Europe. Luckily enough for Russia, though, without NATO's existence and the US's influence, some of these countries over here in the Balkans are going to do a little, betraying. Specifically Hungary, who is a big old Russian fanboy. They haven't obviously broke away from NATO in real life. They're under the NATO thing, but their leader, big Russian fanboy guy, so they're going to join Russia's side here. Exact same thing with Serbia. So now with Hungary and Serbia in this war, it's a little bit different. There's a lot more at stake here. We have Kosovo and Albania join the war on the side of the blue team, and now let's get to the fighting. So first off, we have Russian troops pushing into Estonia. Without NATO and the US here, Estonia is left on their own, and Estonia on their own is literally nothing compared to Russia. They don't have that many troops, and it's like 10,000, I think, which is not enough to defend themselves against the Russians, who have around 1 million. And it's the same thing with Latvia and Lithuania. And it isn't until they get to Poland and Ukraine to where they had to fight an actual large army. The Russians and Belarusians do manage to push into Poland, but are momentarily stopped. Into Ukraine, we have the Russians taking over Crimea, as they have in real life, and pushing into the Donbass area. On the border of Finland, there are some small skirmishes, and that is until the entire Finnish army breaks to the line. These guys make a campaign to go south and capture St. Petersburg, and it isn't until a couple of weeks until the Russians realize that this is an actual threat, and they put troops up here to stop the Finnish. We have Serbia's invasion of Kosovo and meeting the border of Albania, who promptly just kind of pieces out. Hungary sends some troops over into Ukraine and into Poland, which interestingly enough, Poland and Hungary are good friends, but there is a little bit of a problem here. That is Hungary being on the red team, Poland being on the blue team. Poland completely just dismantles their relations with Hungary after they join the war. Yeah, they probably should do that in real life too. So Poland sends a special battalion down south to deal with the Hungarians, and they are pushed back almost completely into Hungary. After losing a little bit of more land, Ukraine itself actually manages to hold out and stop the Russians' advance, and this stays this way for a couple of months. As for Poland themselves, they managed to push back the Russians, And it is here that we see the two sides agree to peace. So looking at this peace treaty here, we see complete Russian expansion with them taking over all of the Baltics and meeting up with Kaliningrad, while they also managed to unite with Belarus. This is a pretty ballsy move here, as of course they've now expanded their border with two of their biggest enemies, which are Poland and Ukraine. Speaking of Ukraine, they took all of Crimea and a lot of their eastern lands while also slipping around the southern coast. And up on the border of Finland, there were no changes as Finland was on the offensive. However, Russia did manage to win the war overall, which means that Finland doesn't gain anything and Poland is let off with not losing any land. So that was kind of the deal there. And obviously Russia is a little bit scary now. So now what else can happen in the world with North America's disappearance? Well, some stuff's gonna go down over here in South America. Like I said at the beginning of the video, America, or the United States, is pretty much holding together South America. I mean, obviously that there's some corruption involved with some stuff going on in Venezuela and Colombia, but ignoring that, it's overall protected by the US, and without the US, South America is left vulnerable. And I'm not saying that some stray European country would roam the Pacific over here to invade a South American country in order to set up a colony, but the South Americans themselves are not happy with each other. And this can be seen with Colombia's declaration of war on Venezuela. Stating that they want to end the corrupt government's regime, they are going to go ahead and start their invasion, pushing into the western parts of Venezuela. Colombia actually makes pretty good progress here as they manage to cut the country down. They then start to focus on the coast and head towards Venezuela's capital. It isn't until that Colombia is close to capturing Venezuela's capital that Brazil joins the war. And Brazil and Venezuela do not have great relations in real life, so that's the reason they're joining, but also because they could possibly get access to the northern Atlantic. So that is Brazil's motive for joining this war. They immediately focus in on pushing up into the area over here, and with that they meet up with Venezuela's northern coast. The rest of Venezuela is given over to Colombia, and the three sides meet up for a peace deal. Alright, looking at this peace treaty here, we have Brazil and Colombia greatly expanding. Of course, Brazil gets access to that northern Atlantic, but Colombia also gets a third of Venezuela. Actually, that's probably around half, which means they increased their size by a third. So now with this, Brazil is going to want to continue to expand as they're on a roll now, and they're specifically going to target these two countries right here, which are Guyana and Suriname. They're not going to go after French Guiana because of the first word in that name, which is French, and France will not allow that to happen. So they're just going to focus on these two. Of course, war is declared, and then now it's just not going to look great for these two guys. Brazilian troops enter in, and they it wasn't meant to be. In this peace treaty, full annexation by Brazil. It wasn't meant to be for these two countries right here, and Brazil just kind of, they had their way. So now that Brazil is expanding rapidly, they're going to want even more land, because why wouldn't you want more land? Brazil is the dominant country in the Western Hemisphere now, if you ignore how it kind of goes like that. The Americas, or should I just say America at this point, Brazil wants to be number one, which they already are, but they want to prove their point. This time they're going to go to war with Bolivia. What did Bolivia do? Absolutely nothing. So this war goes pretty quickly. Once again, Brazil is just the dominant force here, and Bolivia just goodbye. And once again, it's just full annexation by Brazil here. They're not really hesitating on just taking some land. They want all the land, which in turn probably isn't gonna help them out in the long run. It's probably gonna come back at them because you annex a lot of land, a lot of different people, a lot of different cultures. You're gonna get some rebellions popping up. And when it's a lot of land that you don't really assimilate and you just take it, it's gonna form into a civil war. So for now, Brazil's okay, but we'll see later. But now someone else wants to expand, and there's no one down here. It's someone who did it earlier. It's Colombia. They're feeling really grand right now, and pun intended, but they want to keep going. Now they're gonna go after Ecuador. Ecuador is a pretty neutral country, pretty peaceful country. They don't like that fact. So they invade, and Ecuador is going bye-bye. So now South America is looking like it's going to come down to three countries. Those three countries being Chile. That's not Chile. Those countries being Colombia, Brazil, and Argentina. The rest of the countries here aren't probably going to survive much longer. I mean, Chile, however you want to say it, they're probably okay. They're really mountainous, but at the same time, Argentina is going to want access to that Pacific Ocean. Anyway, moving on back to Europe, where Russia is going to continue to do Russian things. This time, they're going to go after Poland, and Poland only. So why does no one come to help Poland? Well, because no one wants to lose another war. We saw what happened with Ukraine. We saw what happened with Finland. Well, they were fine, but it might be different this time. This time they're going for Poland, and no one's here to help them out. Now, Poland on its own is a fairly strong country, but unfortunately, Russia is stronger. The Poles are going to be able to hold out, but for it's not going to be for long. And during this war, we actually have an interesting event happening over here in Western Europe. and that is the formation of the European Union. Not just like the actual like federation thing they have in real life, which is just like an economy union thing. And although very diverse, they are able to put aside those differences and unite together into one fairly strong, maybe one of the strongest countries in the world. Right off the bat, no one else joins this war, as everyone else is just watching the war in Poland break out. I mean, of course, the Europeans are going to be supplying Poland, but it's probably not going to be enough. Speaking of that war in Poland, the Russians have just captured Warsaw. And with the capturing Warsaw, the Russians are able to divide Poland into two pieces. And from here, the southern half falls, and the rest of Poland is soon to fall. Now, if you're Polish, I apologize. I know your country will not fall that quickly. And yeah, but let's get on a roll here, right? But yeah, it's just, I mean, there's no way they win. There's no way they stalemate, so might as well just get it out of the way. So in this peace treaty here, we have them making a pretty interesting decision, and that decision brings back some old familiar borders. But they take over all of eastern Poland and leave Poland in pretty much shambles. They lost their capital, they lost some major cities there. Poland is basically just a shell of its old self at this point. The Europeans sees this and they invite Poland to join, in which Poland joins happily. So that is going to add even more land and power over to the EU. And at this point, Russia is just doing whatever they want and getting away with it. So they continue to do just that. And this time they're going to attack Ukraine. Now Ukraine is like really screwed. I mean, they were already screwed, but now they're like really screwed. They're surrounded on three sides. The Russians are going to go in from the north and also from the south, and from the east and also the west. Yeah, I mean, all of Ukraine's major cities are close to the Russian border, or this one at least. So, I mean, their only strong suit now is down here and Odessa. And the Russians also have a navy, so they're just gonna, yeah. It's best that I don't show the rest of what just happened. Ukraine is gone. Let's go ahead and take a look at the peace treaty. All right, looking at this peace treaty here, as expected, they annexed all of Ukraine. They're doing something that's kind of similar to what Brazil is doing and just taking way too much land too fast. So it is possible that we see another Russian civil war in the future. But for now, they're fine. They're going to be fine throughout the rest of this video. As for the EU here, they're going to retaliate by adding even more countries. This time they add the Czech Republic. They also add in Italy. And finally, and most surprisingly, they add in Spain. So the European Union is greatly expanding at this point, and for a good reason. The Russians are on their border. Speaking of the Russians, they're going to go ahead and create their own little alliance, which will just be known as the Warsaw Pact. Really original there. And as you saw, Hungary and Serbia are going to join in on this, and everyone else is not going to be in a great spot here. No other European countries are going to join, but we are going to see Iran join this. And overall, it looks like the shift of world power is going over to Russia here, who probably should be collapsing at any second now. Looking ahead in the future here, we have the Russians taking over Slovakia. We also have them forcibly taking Moldova. As for the European Union, they add in Austria, they add in Slovenia, and then finally Croatia. The Russians are able to stage a coup in Romania, which ultimately makes them join in on Russia's side with the new government. We then see the EU add in Portugal, Denmark, and Norway. Sweden and Finland create their own little alliance in which the UK joins. This makes it into the Northern Alliance. They are also aligned with the EU, but none of these countries want to fully commit to that. So they just don't want to give up their sovereignty to join the EU, but they want to also help out the EU. So they just, yeah. Looking back to South America now, we have exactly what I said would happening. An alliance between Brazil and Colombia is created, which is basically aimed at taking over all of South America. And in the south, we have Argentina, Chile, and Uruguay all going into a union in order to prevent the expansion of the green team up here. As for the rest of the world, they're just kind of chilling. I don't think the United States or North America as a whole, their disappearance would affect too much. And that is for Africa, Oceania, and the majority of Asia. Of course, with the US disappearing, China would gain the economical upper hand in the world and become the dominant economical force. I don't really even know what would challenge that, because all I know is that the US and China are way up there compared to everyone else in terms of economics. I know Japan would, India would as well. Even maybe the EU at this point. I would see kind of a new back and forth happening. So in real life, we have the USA and Russia going back and forth. In this scenario, it would most likely be China and India having a back and forth. And we could even see a world war escalate from it between the, I guess, the more Western powers and India versus China and their allies. So I guess it would be Russia, Iran, some of the African countries, some of the Asian countries, so on and so forth. So overall, North America disappearing, and kind of in parentheses next to it, the USA, would cause a lot of turmoil in the world. South America would actually do something for once in history. Russia would gain power. China would become the dominant economical force, and a lot more. So that is actually going to do it for today's video. I'm sorry that it's kind of short and yeah, not a really good way to start out the new year, but I'm gonna be honest with you, I woke up at 6 p.m. today. This comes after getting 3 hours of sleep combined for the past 2 days. I like sleeping, so yeah, of course I'm gonna sleep for 14 hours. Also, thank you guys for 90,000 subscribers. We hit it on the 31st of December, which means we did reach that goal for the end of the year, so thank you guys so much for that. But now we have to address the elephant in the room, which is 100,000 subscribers. At the time of recording this, I believe we're at 90,700, which means we're only 9,300 away from 100K. I believe we can do that within a month. I also believe that would be a new record for the channel. So, I mean, if you want to surprise me, go on ahead. Jokes aside though, 100K near future. Like I said in the past couple videos, there will be a live stream for that as soon as we get near it, probably like start streaming at 99,000 subscribers. And yeah, so next week there will be a daily upload week for 90K. This is just mostly just to push us to 100K. And yeah, make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, like the video, share it, comment, all those good things, and I'll see you guys in the next video.